So the women who worked at Stroh's complained that the ad campaign sent a message from the top of the company to the men on the floor that it was okay to treat women like sex objects. Just like the miners, they were viciously harassed and ridiculed, and they had their tools and equipment messed with so that the women feared for their safety. For example, the men would smear kind of a sticky substance on the women's tools, which would make it hard for the women to do their jobs safely. They also, of course, suffered damage to their dignity. One, one supervisor, male, called himself the mayor of Pussyville just because he had women working under him. So the women saw a connection between the ad campaign and their treatment at work, and they decided to file a lawsuit to make their point. As a result, the company pulled the ad campaign, and for a long time, you did not see sexist ads for beer. So, does sexism in advertising actually cause a hostile work environment? Because the women clearly blame the ad campaign as a factor in inciting sexual harassment, they gave me an idea. And in a moment, we'll see how the serendipitous co-occurrence of the two lawsuits in Minnesota in the 1990s helped me to design the Rudman and Borgita study, which you can read. I put it on Sakai, and I assigned it for today. Advertising and sex is an age-old story, right? Advertising is often based on sex appeal, the message being that, hey, if you buy our product, you will be more popular, and in particular, popular with the opposite sex, or as we like to call it, the other gender. In particular, women are often used as sexual objects in ads. They're scantily clad, they're decorative in function, they're seen but not heard, and they're often cloned, right? That's that interchangeable function. So you pull one woman out, you can put another woman in. If you want the fancy term for it, it's called fungibility. The message is that women are to be looked at and lusted after, but not listened to or treated with respect as individuals in their own right. And these kinds of ads are used to sell all kinds of products. The fashion industry is notorious, of course. Here's an ad by Dolce & Gabbana, which had the notorious honor of being selected as the most sexist ad of the year when it came out. But the beauty industry can be just as bad. And alcohol of any kind being paired with sex, you see that's ubiquitous, and it makes some kind of sense. People get kind of inebriated, and then they're they tend to feel like more sexually free or something. But to explain this to me, subs, it doesn't really compute quite the same way. But if you just start looking at advertisements, you see it everywhere. Tile, bathroom tile, chainsaws, automatic rifles, you name it. Sexualized women will often be used to sell the product. And that's in this country. In other countries, it can be even worse. So I lived, as I explained, in Paris as a young woman. This is an ad for a cigarette, which I think it really needs no commentary from me. If you don't read French, it says to smoke is to be a slave to tobacco. Question, but beyond selling the product, can these types of ads influence the way men think about women? And the answer is yes, thanks to a well-established effect that cognitive psychologists discovered about 100 years ago. We call it priming effects. So here's an example. I'm going to start you out with the first one, and then I'll just hope that you say aloud the answer that comes to mind after the first example. So to make you laugh, I'll tell you a joke. You light up a cigarette when you need instead of a Pepsi, you can order the whites of an egg are called and if you said yolk, I'll remind you the color of a yolk is not white, but yellow. Okay, so priming effects are based on solid cognitive principles. If you're thinking about something, words that rhyme with joke, it readily gets transferred to another type of judgment just because it's uppermost in your mind. We call that cognitive accessibility, right? So you'll use it even if it's wrong or inappropriate. When we are primed, we often don't stop to think about how it influences us. Why? Because the influence is so automatic as to be involuntary, against our will. So can we apply this principle to gender harassment in the workplace? So the study that I did with Jean Borghita is called The Afterglow of Construct Accessibility, the Behavioral Consequences of Priming Men to View Women as Sexual Objects. If you make the idea women are sex objects prominent in men's mind or accessible in men's minds, will it influence how they behave towards subsequent women? So why did we do this study? We have to go back to the minds. My co-author, Jean Borghita, was my new graduate advisor at the University of Minnesota, and he was also an expert witness in the Eveleth mining lawsuit. The judge asked him if there was scientific evidence that hostile work environments promote sexist behavior in men. So my advisor knew that there were all kinds of cognitive effects that priming studies had shown, but the judge wasn't so interested in what men were thinking. He wanted to know if it influenced their behavior. So the judge actually knew already from all the exhibits he had looked over that the women's workplace in the mines was just filled with sexualized images. There were everything from pinups to hardcore porn to all kinds of sexist graffiti smeared on the walls and lockers, etc. So he was basically asking, does priming men to view women as sex objects impact their behavior, or is it relatively harmless? Should we care? Should we just let boys be boys, so to speak? So I'll never forget the day that Jean rushed into my office asking me to find out. And I spent a long time scouring the literature very carefully. But while I found hundreds of studies showing that priming has cognitive effects, nothing was there showing that there were behavioral consequences of priming. So it was really up to us to test this idea. But then came the question, how should we prime men to think about women as sex objects? We wanted to use a subtle manipulation. After all, if we had guys walk into a lab and, we had pornographic images plastered or sexist graffiti plastered on the walls or something like that, their antenna would immediately go up and they'd become reactive, and we wouldn't be able to study their responses in a natural kind of environment, right? So there's where the Strauss case came in, because it suggested that watching television commercials like Swedish bikini team beer ads might be effective. Certainly the women who worked with these guys thought that it was having an impact in their workplace, so it seemed like it was worth a try. And the thing about these ads is that they're so prevalent, they're so commonplace, that no one is likely to be suspicious of the true purpose of the study. So our methodology had 3 parts, each one introduced as if it were a separate experiment. The priming task consisted of watching the ads. The manipulation check was just a check to see if the ads influenced men's thoughts. And the behavioral assessment, that was like the holy grail. That was the thing we were really after. Can we see whether priming affects men's behavior toward women? So for the first part, the priming task, it was based on a cover story. We had guys sign up for a consumer research project. They were told that they would watch and rate television ads. And in fact, they were randomly assigned to one of 2 conditions. In the prime tape, we had 20 ads, 16 of which portrayed women as sexual objects. 4 of them were neutral. And the control tape had 20 ads, which had no women in them at all, but they often used the same product like beer, clothing, or soft drinks. So the next two clips will show you the soft drink stimuli that we used. The first Pepsi ad portrays women as interchangeable decorative objects who are scantily dressed. So obviously that goes in the sexist prime condition. And then the second Pepsi ad was presented to the control group. Same product, but nothing sexualized about it.